Today is the 26th of 6th, 2023, and we want to look at multiplying and dividing fractions. In our last lesson, we looked at adding and subtracting fractions. And then we said that if you are adding or subtracting fractions, the denominators have to be the same. So if you need to convert the denominators to be the same by using the principles of multiples, and then you don't do anything to the denominator. So if you have denominators of 7, you repeat the same denominator. But if you are adding, you add the numerators, or you subtract the numerators. We do not add or subtract the numerators when you are adding or subtracting. Today we want to look at multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay. Now, when you are multiplying fractions, here you multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominators. Okay, and maybe you reduce it to the lowest form if the question is asking you to do that, or you can leave it as a top heavy fraction, or an improper fraction, or a mixed fraction. We've done all of those in the other videos. Okay, so I'll give you examples today to show you what I mean. So for example, assuming we want to multiply 2 over 5 times 4 over 7. When you are multiplying, you don't need to keep the denominators the same. So you multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominator. So here, if I multiply 2 by 4, I'll get 8. And if I multiply 5 by 7, I'll get 35. Now, 8 and 35, we don't have any common factors. So this is actually the lowest form. So we won't reduce it any further. So our answer to multiply these two fractions is 8 over 35. Now let's look at division. Division is similar, but to make it is simpler. Okay, let's look at this analogy here. Assuming I have 4 pieces, okay, and each of them, I cut them into 6 parts. So I have 4 pieces, 4 full pieces. I'm going to cut each of them into 6 parts. What I've done is, now I have 24 portions to serve 24 or 12 people. Okay, what it means is 4 pieces and then divided by 1/6, because each of them is cut into 6 parts. Okay, so now 4, we can't divide this way. So to change the division sign to a multiply sign, we need to flip this fraction here, the second fraction, not the first. Okay, not the first one. So 4 will be the same, but the second part of our fraction, from 1/6, we flip it to 6/1. Okay, and then we change the division sign to a multiplication sign. So now we can just do what we did for multiplying. So 4 times 6 is 24 portions. That is what the PISA question means. Okay, so for fraction, the second part of the fraction, for dividing, the second part of the fraction, we flipped it, or we turn it upside down, and then we change the division sign to a multiplication sign. I hope I'm making sense to you. So let's have a quick at our first example here. So we have 4 divided by 2 whole number, 3/4. Now this is a mixed fraction. We saw that in one of a video, a whole part and a fraction part, which we can change into a fraction. So we'll get a top-heavy fraction. The numerator will be greater than the denominator. How did we say we do that? We first multiply these numbers. So we multiply 4 by 2 and add 3. So now we have 4 divided by 4 by 2 is 8. Add 3 is 11. So we have 11 divided by 4. Okay, now since we are dividing, this is a top-heavy fraction because the numerator is greater than the denominator. Now, how do we change the division sign to a multiplication sign? So we have 4, which we don't have to do anything to. We put a multiplication sign, and then our fraction here, we are going to flip it. So 11 divided by 4 becomes 4 divided by 11. So now we can multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. 4 is the same as 4 divided by 1, because any number divided by 1 is the same number, just making it simpler so that it will look like a fraction. So we multiply the numerators and then we multiply the denominators. Okay, so here when we multiply the numerators and we multiply the denominators, we have 4 times 4 and it's 16. 1 times 11 and it's 11. So we can leave our answer in this form as an improper fraction. If the question says we should leave our answer in this form, but if the question says we should go further and simplify and leave it as a mixed fraction, then we would look at this. So how many 11s do we have in 16? 1. So 16 minus 11, we are left with 5 divided by 11. So depending on the question we have, we can leave it as an improper fraction or a top-heavy fraction or as a mixed fraction, a whole number part and a fraction part. Okay, so this is this example. Now let's look at simple examples before we finish today. So the first example is multiplying. So I have 1 over 4 times 3 over 8. So we multiply the numerators and we multiply the denominators. So 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 8 is what? 32. Multiplication is straightforward. You just multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. But assuming this was a mixed fraction, like this number, then we have to change it into an improper fraction before we multiply. Let's look at the second example. 2 over 3 times 5 over 9. Okay, so multiplying again, so which is straightforward. 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 9 is 27. Now, this is the lowest form. We can't reduce any further, so this is our fraction answer when we multiply these two. Let's look at the third one. 1 over 6 times 2 over 3. So again, we are multiplying. We are not adding. We are not subtracting. And we are not dividing. Okay, so 1 times 2 is 2. 6 times 3 is 18. But look, 2 is a factor of 18. So how many 2's do we have in 2? 1. How many 2's do we have in 18? 9. So 2 over 18 equals 1 over 9. So this is the simplest form that we can leave this. The fourth example on multiplication. 4 over 5 times 5 over 6. We are multiplying. Okay, we are multiplying. So 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 6 is 30. Now look at 30 over 20 over 30. Okay, so we can tell how many 10's do we have in 22? How many 10's do we have in 33? So our answer in the lowest form is 2 over 3. Now the next example is a division example. Okay, 3 over 7 divided by 1 over 4. So we said we will keep 3 over 7, which is this. Then we change the division to a multiplying sign, and then we flip the second fraction. So when you flip 1 over 4, you are going to get 4 over 1. Now we can multiply. So division, you always have to flip the second fraction. If it's a top-heavy fraction, you can flip. But if it's a mixed fraction, you have to change it to a top-heavy fraction or to a fraction form before you can multiply. Otherwise, you won't get the answer right. So now, 3 times 4 is 12. 7 times 1 is 7. So since the top is bigger than 7, this becomes a top-heavy or mixed fraction. So now we can change it. This becomes a top-heavy or improper fraction, and we can change it into a mixed fraction. So how many 7s are in 12? 1. We have 5 remainder and then 7. So this will be our answer. So if the question says leave your answer as a mixed improper fraction or top-heavy fraction, then you go for this. If it says leave your answer as a mixed fraction, then you write this. Our next example on division: 1 over 7 divided by 1 over 6. So 1 over 7 will repeat itself here. Okay. Then the division becomes multiplication. If we immediately we put multiplication sign, we need to flip the second fraction. So when we flip 1 over 6, we are going to get 6 over 1. So now we can multiply. 1 times 6 is 6. 7 times 1 is 1. 7 times 1 is 7, pardon me. So our answer here will be 6 over 7. This is quite straightforward because that is the lowest form or the simplest form. Let's look at the next example. So here, 1 over 3 divided by 3 over 5. Okay, so 1 over 3, we do not do anything to the first fraction. Now we change the division sign to a multiplication sign. And then, immediately we do that, we need to flip the second fraction. So 3 over 5 becomes 5 over 3. So 1 times 5 equals 5. 3 times 3 equals 9. So our answer is 5 over 9. And we can't reduce it any further. So this is the simplest form. So this will be our answer. Okay. The last example for today. So 4 divided by 7. 4 over 7 divided by 3 over 4 is a division again. So first we keep 4 over 7, which is this one. We are dividing and we want to divide. So this division sign becomes a multiplication sign. And immediately we do that, we need to flip this fraction. So 4 over 7 times 4 over 3. If you don't flip it, your answer will be wrong. Now we can multiply. So 16, 7 times 3 is 21. 16 over 21, they don't have any common factors. So that will be our lowest 10. So when you are multiplying, as here, it's a straightforward. You multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. If you have to change to the lowest form, you do that. If this is the lowest form, you leave it as that. If you have a topic heavy number and the question is asking you to leave it as that, you leave it as that. Or if they ask you to leave it as a mixed fraction, like in this example, then you go further and reduce your answer to a mixed fraction. That is multiplication. Now, if you are dividing, you repeat the first fraction, as we can see. You change the division sign to a multiplication sign. And then you flip the second fraction. So 1 over 4 here becomes 4 over 1. So whatever second fraction you have, you flip it. You always remember to flip it. Immediately you change the division sign to a multiplication sign. And then you multiply the numerators and the denominators. And whatever your answer is, depending on the question, you can leave it as an improper, a top heavy fraction, or a mixed fraction, or put it in the simplest form. I hope I'm making some sense. Okay. So we'll end our lesson here today and hope to see you in our next lesson.